A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, we're grateful another Chibok girl has been rescued from Boko Haram captivity. Ruth Nglada Pogo was married to a Boko Haram fighter and returned with the 2 children she was delivered of while in captivity. This information was volunteered by spokesperson to the Borno State Governor, Babagana Zulum. A statement from the governor's office says Ruth and her apparently repentant husband surrendered themselves to the Nigerian military on July 28th at a location in Bama. Security and government officials had kept the development a secret while trying to contact her parents and Association of Parents of the Missing Schoolgirls to ascertain her identity. She has been reunited with her mother. You can read more on the story on the Channels TV website. But this gives us hope that others in the captivity of those non-state actors will be found and reunited with their families as well. To the program this week. A few weeks ago, the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission marked another Diaspora Day, celebrating Nigerians in the diaspora and drawing awareness to issues in the country affecting the diaspora. As a follow-up to the celebrations, our colleague in London, Ijoma Oniato, had a sit-down with the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Erewa, on NIDCOM awareness, remittances, and investments from the diaspora. It's an interview you don't want to miss. Later in the program, checking in on developments in the Middle East again as the Taliban continues to seize more territories in Afghanistan, plus growing unrest in the West Bank. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. Let's check in on other discussions in diplomatic circles. We'll be right back.
The Abia State Governor, Okezie Ikpeazu, has signed into law the Abia State Diaspora Bill, recently passed by the State House of Assembly. Shortly after signing the bill at Government House Umuahia, Governor Ikpeazu commended the State House of Assembly for responding to the yearnings of the Abia community in the diaspora through the crafting of a bill that would provide legal backing to the participation of Abians in the diaspora in the governance of the state. The governor then promised to create a platform for Abia indigenes from all walks of life to participate in the governance process, noting that Abia is endowed with men and women with great capabilities scattered across the world. The USS Herschel Woody Williams has arrived in Nigeria for a maritime interoperability planning event with leaders from the Nigerian Navy, which began on August the 7th. Herschel Woody is scheduled to participate in a 3-day at-sea training exercise with Nigerian offshore patrol vessels and members of Ghana's Special Boat Squadron. Sailors assigned to Herschel Woody Williams will also help paint Lagos State Model Nursery and Primary School at Chapo Ajegunle and play sports with members of the Nigerian Navy. Nigeria maintains the largest navy in the Gulf of Guinea region and is critical to security and stability in Africa. Directors at America's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has warned that vaccine hesitancy could lead to the development of future COVID variants that are resistant to the current crop of vaccines. He says unvaccinated people who had previously been infected by COVID also remain vulnerable to any new variants of the virus.
If you've had COVID, you might be protected for a while against the original virus that you were infected with. But when variants come along, you are vulnerable. And there was a study that came out within this past week that showed that if you are infected, recover, and get 1 shot of the vaccine, your protection doubles what it would be if you got 2 shots of the vaccine and were not infected. So it is a major advantage for people who have been infected and recovered to really strongly protect them against getting reinfected with a new variant. That's the reason why we strongly recommend that even if you have been infected, that you get vaccinated.
Nearly 10,000 migrants from Africa and the Caribbean have been stranded in the small town of Necoclí on the border between Colombia and Panama amid COVID-19 pandemic. Border control, among other anti-pandemic restrictions, has led to a surge in the number of migrants waiting in Nekokli to cross the border. Nekokli, located in Colombia's Antioquia department, is a small coastal town with a permanent population of about 20,000 people, which is a speedboat ride away from Panama and other Central American countries. As efforts to curb the raging COVID-19 pandemic continues, countries including Colombia have imposed entry restrictions on foreigners, such as border closure and strict scrutiny of visa issuance, which has put many people's migration plans on hold.
Welcome back. There are no actual figures of the number of Nigerians in the diaspora, but the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs estimates that as of June last year, there were 1.7 million Nigerians in diaspora. Whatever the number, it presupposes that diaspora remittances would be really high. Let's hear more from my colleague, Ijoma Onyato, in her interview with the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Erewa, in London, a couple of weeks after the Diaspora Day celebrations.
Talking about the commission now, I mean, it's a fairly young commission.
2 years.
2 years, and there's been quite a bit. What are some of the strengths that you would say that you've been able to achieve in the last 2 years, let me say?
Well, I think first thing is putting the diaspora issues on the front burner. Even reaching out to the diaspora, to the Nigerians in diaspora, and there's a whole lot of that to do. Because I still realize that a lot of Nigerians in diaspora are not even aware of the commission. They don't even have anything to do with the Nigerian missions and all that. So, and it's important to reach out. So we're trying to find every way to reach out to Nigerians abroad. And when we've been able to do that, you realize that they actually have a passion. There are a lot of things they want to do, but they don't know how or who to talk to. So we're saying, now you have a commission. Talk to us. Let's work with you. And they're all over the world. So first thing is putting diaspora issues on the front burner. And then we have a diaspora policy, a holistic diaspora policy, which has just been ratified by the Federal Executive Council under President Muhammadu Buhari. So that will guide our diaspora engagement, and virtually every MDA has a role to play. We have some programs for the diaspora. There's the Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, which takes place November 16-17 this year. Last year was by webinar. So this year it's going to be a hybrid, and there'll be a lot of activities. And diasporas are coming in. A lot of them are showing interest in healthcare, education, ICT, agriculture, and the food business.
So how do you plan to coordinate it all? Because some of the feedback that you get from Nigerians in diaspora, those doing well, who hear about the commission for the first time, is there a targeted approach to how you're going to coordinate it?
I'll just say an integrated approach. We use all means. Nigerians they already know about the commission that are there. Our website, we're developing an app that will be available to every Nigerian in the diaspora. You can download the app and you can get a whole lot of information, of course, working with our missions. Now, we have diaspora groups, but I believe that a lot of those groups and associations need to do more to reach out to Nigerians in the various territories. And then we've created a portal, a data portal for Nigerians in the diaspora, and I will keep encouraging them to go to the portal and just register your presence, and let's see what we can do together. So it's a lot of work, but we're up to the task, and it's just beginning.
Some of the people I've spoken to, I mean, since I began to look out for these Nigerians in diaspora as well, yes, I directed them to the portal, and some of them had privacy concerns. That what are they going to do with the data, for instance, with all this data protection?
No, you see, everybody you guard your data, but we're just saying, let's know who you are, where you are, what you're doing. For instance, one gentleman who got in touch with us needed to do something in, I think, Rivers State, and we're able to put him through. So it's about what are you doing? How can we help you? So it's really, we don't need anything with anybody's data. It's information. With data, you can plan better. I'll tell you something. During COVID, the need for data was even more evident. For instance, you want to plan to return people. You're not even aware that you have that many people there. So data is key to anybody, but your data is secured with our portal. That's why it's a portal. And If you don't want to do that, then you can communicate with us.
Now, speaking about coming back home to invest, looking at the World Bank's report on diaspora remittances, I know that also came up when you celebrated National Diaspora Day, and the remittances are down at an old, well, let me not say an old
But
time.
that's to be expected due to COVID.
That's the thing, but some countries like Ghana, Zambia...
I don't know about Ghana. I know that some countries had an increase, but it depends on how it impacted you.
Yeah.
So already there was a projection of at least 20%. I'm on a site with the World Bank, Swiss government and all, so that projection was already there. So that, but even beyond
so you don't think it's
remittances,
anything to do with the fact that people are not hearing good news?
No, two things. No, two things. Maybe we still need to do more about encouraging formal remittances. Maybe the informal ones are even more now. Maybe.
What's the difference?
But here's the thing. No, you see, the informal, you don't record it. You're not going to know. So I'm in England now. I'm going home. You give me $2,000, give my auntie. It's not recorded. But you see, the taxes on remittances still needs to go down. Our part of the world still has the largest amount of levies, almost 9%. Whereas in other countries that you mentioned, it's 3%. So why should I pay 9%? Because I want to send you money when I can send you without paying anything. So that has to go down. We have to work at that. So CBN has come with a 5 naira to $1 policy, but we still need to reduce the levies on remittances.
So
but you see, for
think
me,
that if we're able to desegregate the formal from the informal, then
if we're able to encourage the informal more,
okay,
to make it formal. So I hope the CBN policies will encourage, not discourage. But you see, we keep talking about remittances. Remittances go to running your day-to-day activity. Okay, my mother is ill, take care of your health, send these kids, my brothers, to school and all that. But what about investments? What is going into investment? So that shows that the diaspora is an economic factor because the money has an impact on the economy.
I spoke to a nurse who's pretty high up in the NHS, and she had said, that she would really had even begun the process of seeing what she can do to come back home, work with 1 or 2 charities here and there, and she became frustrated with the bureaucry. Then direct her to us. Tell her there's a commission for her now. So if she, and then we still need to do more to communicate. But there's a whole lot of Nigerians abroad out there, but they are beginning to know. So that kind of lady, let her reach us. So I was listening to the DG of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and she was responding to some of the mails and complaints people have of not being able to reach the right MDA or ministry. And she talked about having a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Are you going to work on that?
Absolutely.
And how?
You see, the one-stop shop we are working on now is basically digital. It doesn't matter where you are. It's about what you can do from anywhere. So we're trying to have a digital. And also we also need to have, of course, a physical structure. You know,
I'm thinking of a diaspora office in
diaspora. Well, we are supposed to have offices, but the funding is not there. But we're hoping that by next year we'll have maybe at least 2 in the UK, in the US. So we will have continental offices in the diaspora. So we're starting with maybe 1 or 2 and all that. And then have a diaspora house. But in the meantime, let's go digital. Anything you want, you get online, and then communicate with us.
So registration in the database should be the first.
Oh, yes, it's part of it. And then take the Diaspora Day, for instance. I'm sure you didn't know that it's been on for about 15 years.
I had no idea.
It's been on for 15 years, but now you have a commission on board, and we've made it bigger. And a lot of people will say, wow. So I'm sure by next year it's going to even be bigger and better.
Well, I can't have you in the chair without talking about diaspora voting.
Because
one of the people I spoke to said he was very frustrated. He came, he wanted to participate in politics. He tried physically and it didn't work out. And so he thought, if you want me to be part of you, I should be able to vote from wherever I am in the world.
Yeah,
they're not happy with the progress of that.
Well, I'm not happy either. But I hope that with the work we're doing with the National Assembly, and what we're telling the National Assembly is this: it's not the National Assembly that will conduct voting. We're saying that now you're amending the Constitution. Just make it possible for INEC to be able to conduct diaspora voting when INEC is sure that the infrastructure is there. You see, it's INEC that will decide, okay, I want to do London. I want to do this particular country. I want to do this category of people. So we're appealing to National Assembly, and I appeal again, that Just make it possible.
I mean, there's so many directions we could take this, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And hopefully the commission will be better known and accounted for in the lives of the Nigerians who are out there doing well. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Welcome back. The Taliban is reportedly claiming more towns in Afghanistan, one of which was the city of Sheberghan in the northern province of Jowzjan on Saturday. It's the second regional capital to fall to the militants after Zaranj in the southwestern province of Nimros, which fell on Friday.
The Taliban fighters on Sunday seized key government buildings in the northern Afghan city of Kunduz, leaving government forces hanging on to control of the airport and their own base. Footage provided by the Taliban shows the National Directorate of Security compound and the Afghan National Police headquarters in Kunduz after they were purportedly overtaken by militants. A spokesman for the Afghan security forces said extremely heavy fighting was going on in Kunduz as security forces fought to defend the city. But according to a provincial lawmaker, the insurgents had taken key buildings in the city of 270,000 people, raising fears that it could be the latest to fall to the Taliban. Four regional capitals have now fallen to the Taliban since Friday. Kunduz is their most important gain this year. Violence has escalated across Afghanistan after US and other international forces began to withdraw their troops from the country following 20 years of military operations. Meanwhile, hundreds of travelers have been seen stranded on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border on Saturday after the Taliban closed a key crossing on Friday. The Taliban says the busy Spin Boldak crossing into the southwestern Pakistani border, officials at Chaman, will remain closed until Islamabad dropped or relaxed its visa requirements for Afghans. Since the Taliban took control of the crossing, Pakistani border officials there have begun enforcing visa requirements for Afghans, which previously were not as strictly observed. The Taliban has called on Pakistan to scrap all visa requirements for Afghans. Outside of the conflict zone, the UN Special Envoy for Afghanistan on Friday questioned the Taliban's commitment to a political settlement, telling the UN Security Council the war has entered a deadlier and more destructive phase, with more than 1,000 civilians killed in the past month during a Taliban offensive.
In the past weeks, the war in Afghanistan has entered a new, deadlier, and more destructive phase. The Taliban campaign during June and July to capture rural areas has achieved significant territorial gains. From this strengthened position, they have begun to attack the larger cities. Just in these three cases, I am talking of over 1,000 casualties just in this last month. A party that was genuinely committed to a negotiated settlement would not risk so many civilian casualties because it would understand that the process of reconciliation will be more challenging the more blood is shed. There is a striking contrast between the activity on the battlefield and the quiet stalemate at the negotiation table in Doha, where we should be seeing the opposite. Quiet on the battlefield and engagement around the negotiating table.
She says the United Nations expects both irregular and legal migration numbers to double this year. Peace talks between the Afghan government and Taliban negotiators started last year in the Qatari capital of Doha, but have not made any substantive progress. The UN Security Council has the ability to impose targeted sanctions on Taliban individuals or entities who constitute a threat to the peace, stability, and security of Afghanistan. Over in the United States, the White House says recent actions by the Taliban will not help them gain international legitimacy.
If the Taliban claim to want international legitimacy, these actions are not going to get them the legitimacy they seek. They do not have to stay on this trajectory. They could choose to devote the same energy to the peace process as they are to their military campaign. We strongly urge them to do so. This is what the Afghan people so urgently need, deserve, after decades of war, and is very much in Afghanistan's neighbors' interest to invest renewed energy into a peace process that promotes a peaceful Afghanistan and stable region. The president made clear after 20 years at war, it's time for American troops to come home. And as he said at the time, the status quo was not an option. The Taliban was prepared to attack U.S. and NATO troops after May 1st, which was the deadline for our departure. He also feels and has stated that the Afghan government and the Afghan National Defense Forces have the training, equipment, and numbers to prevail. And now is the moment for the leadership and the will in the face of the Taliban's aggression and violence. Let me strongly condemn, on behalf of the government, of course, the assassination of Dawa Khan Manipal, the director of the Afghan Governmental Information Media Center. His murder follows the bombing attack in Kabul earlier this week that targeted the acting Afghan defense minister. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for this later attack, and there's no reason to doubt reports they are responsible.
More Taliban violence has been recorded on the part of the government. Last week, a car bomb exploded. It had targeted the house of the Afghan defense minister, Bismillah Khan Mohammadi. It left all the 4 attackers and 8 civilians dead. More than 20 others sustained injuries. Many residential buildings and vehicles were badly damaged near the site of the attack.
Leader of Iranian-backed Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, says his group will respond to Israeli airstrikes on open land that could escalate its actions in the future. We've been here before. Both sides exchanged airstrikes a couple of months ago, leaving nothing but death and destruction, especially in the West Bank.
يوم أمس مرتبط بالغارات الإسرائيلية المباشرة التي حصلت.
Hezbollah group leader Hassan Nasrallah says his group has chosen to respond to Israeli airstrikes on open land but could escalate its actions in the future. No strikes were reported on Saturday and no casualties have been reported thus far. On Friday, Hezbollah fired rockets towards Israeli forces, drawing retaliatory fire from Israel into South Lebanon. Both sides targeted open land, indicating that they did not wish to escalate the salvos further. In a speech commemorating the end of the 2006 war with Israel, Mr. Nasrallah said this week Israeli airstrikes were a dangerous development that had not been seen in the last 15 years. He said the group wanted to show any Israeli airstrike would be responded to in the appropriate and proportional way. Nasrallah says Hezbollah's options include a response on any open land in northern occupied Palestine, Galilee or the Golan Heights.
على الفلاحين والمزارعين والمدنيين في كل شمال فلسطين محتلة أن يخلوا الأراضي.
The exchanges began on Wednesday with a rocket strike on Israel from Lebanon, for which no group claimed responsibility. That attack, on which Hezbollah has not commented, drew retaliatory Israeli artillery and airstrikes. Israel said it did not wish to escalate to a full war, though it is ready for one. The flare-up, which has caused no casualties, followed an alleged Iranian attack on an Israeli-managed oil tanker in the Gulf last week, in which 2 crew members, a Briton and a Romanian, were killed. Tehran denied involvement. In another development, Israeli troops shot and killed a Palestinian and injured others on Friday during clashes at a protest against Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli military said that 700 Palestinians gathered in the area, south of the Palestinian city of Nablus, burning tires and throwing rocks and petrol bombs towards troops and border police. Israeli forces responded with riot dispersal means. The Palestine Red Crescent Ambulance Service says 21 other Palestinians had been shot by Israeli troops, most of them with rubber-tipped bullets. Others were treated for tear gas inhalation. The West Bank is among territories where Palestinians seek statehood. Violence has simmered there since US-sponsored talks between the Palestinians and Israel broke down in 2014. Palestinians have staged near-daily protests in Beita, south of Nablus, to voice anger at a nearby Israeli settler outpost, often leading to violent clashes with Israeli troops. The settlers agreed to leave the outpost in July under an agreement with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett following weeks of demonstrations by Palestinians lighting fires that often engulfed the outpost in smoke.
This is where we end the program this week. Remember, you can watch episodes again on youtube.com/channelsweb. Just search for Diplomatic Channel on the playlist. I'm Amarachi Ubadi. I'll see you next time.